Hello guys, we made this video to give you a brief visual history of the 15-year-long Lebanese Civil War that began in 1975 and ended in 1990. The Civil War has been obscured for two main reasons. First, no one really won the war, and history is typically written by the victors. Second, the main actors of the war are still in power today, so it wouldn't be in their best interest to be held accountable. This is why we wish to shed light on this tragic period, 30 years after the end of it all. It all started with the infamous bus massacre perpetrated in the central Beirut neighborhood of Ain al-Rimmani on April 13, 1975. On that day, the Kata'ib party, which was the main Christian right-wing militia at the time, was celebrating the baptism of one of its main militants' child in the Church of Our Lady of Deliverance, when all of a sudden 6 armed Palestine Liberation Organization militants opened fire in the air. As the Kata'ib militiamen tried to divert the route leading to the church, a clash erupted between the two groups and one of the Palestinians was accidentally killed. An hour later, Palestinian gunmen arrived in 2 separate cars and opened fire on the Kata'ib men, killing 4 of them. The latter set up roadblocks in the area and opened fire on a bus transporting Palestinian and Lebanese civilians returning from a political rally in West Beirut. More than 20 were killed and 20 others were wounded. Feeling threatened by the presence of armed Palestinians and their left-wing allies, the Christian militias, mainly the Kata'ib, attacked the Palestinian Karantina camp in predominantly Christian East Beirut, killing around 1,500 Palestinians and Lebanese Muslims, which included many civilians. It happened on January 18, 1976. Shortly after taking control of Karantina, the Christians laid siege to a second Palestinian camp, Tell al-Zatar, also in East Beirut, in the Christian town of Dequene. The siege lasted from January to August of that same year. It is debatable whether a massacre was perpetrated there, as there was fierce resistance from the camp itself and many fighters died from both sides. On January 20th, 1976, following the Karantina massacre, thousands of armed Muslim Lebanese, assisted by Palestinian militiamen, attacked the Christian town of Damour on the way to the south and massacred around 500 Christians, including some 20 fighters. Chaos reigned in Lebanon, and the neighboring Arab states had to intervene. Heads of state from Egypt, Kuwait, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Syria convened in Riyadh, and it was decided to send an Arab peacekeeping force to Lebanon in late October 1976. It was named the ADF, or Arab Deterrent Forces, and was comprised of 30,000 Syrian, Libyan, Saudi Arabian, and Sudanese troops. 25,000 of these were Syrian, and the ADF itself actually received orders from then Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, who took advantage of the situation and ordered his generals to set up military checkpoints all over the country. The Syrian army became more and more involved in the conflict, leading up to the withdrawal of all other contingents of the ADF in the spring of 1979. Kamal Jumblat, Druze leader and head of the Lebanese National Movement, a political organization of over 15 parties and militias, was getting tired of the Syrian army's practices and violations of international law and had become vocal about it in his many speeches and rallies. On March 16, 1977, as he was on his way to Beirut with his 2 bodyguards, a golden Pontiac Firebird with an Iraqi license plate blocked his path. 2 gunmen came out of it and showered Jumblat's car with bullets, killing him and the 2 other men in the process. The Druze, who had been living in that area for centuries, thought it was the Christians who had killed their leader, and killed around 200 of them in broad daylight. Former Secretary General of the Lebanese Communist Party George Hawi claimed in 2005 that the Syrian Ba'ath Party was responsible for Jumblat's assassination, but it was never confirmed. The 2 biggest Muslim communities in Lebanon were and still are the Sunni and the Shia. The Shia had been marginalized socially and politically up until 1974, when Shia religious figure Imam Musa al-Sadr founded the famous Movement of the Dispossessed, alongside former MP and Speaker of Parliament Hussein al-Husseini. A year later, in 1975, the party was absorbed into what became the Amal movement, representing most Shia of Lebanon and playing a key role in the conflict from beginning to end. On March 25, 1978, al-Sadr flew to Libya to meet with Gaddafi and other officials. He was last seen on March 31st. To this day, it remains unknown whether he is still alive or not. Months later, in 1979, the Iranian Revolution deposed the Shah as Ayatollah Khomeini rose to power, paving the way in 1982 for the creation of Hezbollah, the most powerful armed faction in Lebanon today. Up until late 1982, the Christian right-wing militias had found an ally in Israel. It was in the interest of both sides to weaken and eventually eliminate the PLO and all other armed Palestinian factions. To that end, in 1976, charismatic Christian leader Bashir Gemayel founded the Lebanese Forces, an offspring of the Kata'ib Party. Former Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin decided to send his troops and invade Lebanon on June 6, 1982, when an attempt was made by the Palestinians to assassinate Shlomo Argov, Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom at the time. The PLO was eventually defeated in West Beirut and had to retreat to the northern town of Tripoli before seeking refuge in Tunisia with protection from the United States and international peacekeeping forces. Gemayel was elected president on August 25th of the same year, much to the discontent of some of the warring sides. He promised to bring reforms to the country and make sure all communities are represented fairly in parliament. Around 3 weeks later, on September 14th, a bomb placed in the Kata'ib's Beirut headquarters exploded, killing Gemayel and 26 other party members. 2 days later, on September 16th, believing that the Palestinians were responsible for the death of their leader, a number of Lebanese forces fighters snuck into the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps in West Beirut and committed one of the most atrocious acts of violence in the history of Lebanon. More than 1,500 unarmed Palestinians were brutally murdered. It is widely believed today that Eli Hbeya, in charge of the Lebanese Forces Intelligence Wing after Gemayel's election, and Ariel Sharon, then Israeli Minister of Defense, had planned the massacre. The person responsible for Gemayel's assassination turned out to be Habib Shartouni, a Lebanese member of the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. On December 28, 1985, Hbeya, Walid Jumblat, Kemal Jumblat's son, now leader of the Druze Socialist Progressist Party, and Nabih Berri, head of the Amal movement after al-Sadra's disappearance, all convened in Damascus in the presence of Abdul Halim Khaddam, then Syrian Minister of Foreign Affairs. The famous tripartite accord was signed there with the aim of putting an end to the Lebanese conflict by allowing Syria to act as a mediator between the warring factions. The event fueled the anger of many in Lebanon, including Samir Jaja, who had become in charge of the Lebanese forces military wing. The party was now divided between Hbeya's men and the ones loyal to Jaja. Bloody battles occurred and hundreds of Christian fighters died, resulting in Hbeya's escape to the town of Zahle on January 15, 1986. Michel Aoun, Christian commander of the Lebanese armed forces at the time, decided to wage war against the Syrians in early 1989, then targeted the Lebanese forces led by Samir Jaja in early January of 1990. Both initiatives were taken to ensure the sovereignty of the Lebanese army in the country. The Lebanese forces were defeated and forced to give up their weapons, but the Syrian army was able to overpower Aoun and take control of the presidential palace on October 13, 1990. Aoun first sought refuge at the French embassy, then fled to France, where he lived until 2005. A year earlier, on October 22, 1989, a number of Lebanese officials traveled to Ta'if, Saudi Arabia, to sign the Ta'if Agreement, aimed at putting an end to the Lebanese war. Ronem Awad was elected president on November 5th, but was killed in a car bombing in Beirut 17 days later at the Independence Day parade. He was succeeded by Ilyes Lehrewi, who remained in office until 1998. Thank you all for listening, and remember, this is only a summary of the main events of the Lebanese conflict. We will be posting more videos with more information and details on what happened. If there's any particular topic about the Lebanese Civil War that you'd like to know more about, please let us know in the comment section below.